Hey guys, welcome back to the Pausing Porn podcast. I'm Mark, and today I want to talk to you guys about something a lot of us fear in recovery: relapse. I know what relapse feels like firsthand. Every time it happened, I thought it was proof that I was too weak or even just a bad person. I can't even count the number of times I told myself that this would be the last relapse, only to do the exact same thing the very next day. But today, if I were to relapse, I would respond completely different. That's what I want to share with you. Not to glorify relapse, but to show you how to respond in a way that turns it into growth instead of shame. So let's get into it. I've said this many times before, but I don't measure my recovery by streaks. What matters to me are the fruits of recovery, the actual changes in my life. Because the truth is, 365 days porn free doesn't mean much if your life still looks exactly the same as it did before. I don't say I've recovered because I can point to the calendar and say, look, I've made it 1 year, I've recovered. I say it because every area of my life has seen growth and I'm achieving the goals that I wanted to. If this was not the case, and my life still looked the exact same way, then I'd be telling you guys that I'm still in recovery. Now, even with all the growth I've been through, I am not bulletproof. I'm not a guru. I'm not Superman. There's always a risk of relapse. Could I relapse right after recording this podcast? Yeah, it's possible. Is it likely? No. However, the possibility is still there. And that's why I want to share this with you. If I relapse today, here's exactly what I would do and how it would look completely different from how I used to handle relapse a few years ago. I'm going to pause here for a moment to clarify something. Relapse, of course, is not the goal. In a perfect world, we'd all be able to press a big red button and never relapse again. But that's not reality. We don't have a magic button. Relapse happens, unfortunately. And it's not because we're weak, but because we're trying to rewire patterns that have been put into our brains for a long period of time. These could be patterns in our brains that have existed for years or even decades. I see a lot of people online that try to oversimplify relapse. One thing that stands out for me is a few months ago I was posting on Reddit something about relapse, and I remember someone commented. They said, "Don't relapse no matter what," as a way to kind of oppose my post. And honestly, that really annoyed me. Not because I wanted to give permission to other people to relapse, but because it was such an unhelpful oversimplification of recovery. Like, yes, just don't relapse no matter what. If only it was that simple, right? If only the hundreds of thousands of people in that Reddit recovery community had just thought, hey, why don't I just not relapse? Then they wouldn't be there. Like, it's not that easy. The same for people that have a gambling addiction. If only they could just not gamble, or people that are experiencing depression. What if we just tell them, just don't be sad? This does not work. It's an oversimplification. In reality, people are going to relapse. And honestly, science shows that is part of the process. That is part of recovery. No, it is not the goal. We don't aim in recovery to relapse, but it does happen along the way. So this is just a clarification. I'm not telling you guys go and relapse, but I'm also not someone that just says just don't do it because I know it's not that easy. In the past, my response to relapse followed the same script almost every single time. First would come regret immediately after I just finished. Then I'd see guilt and finally shame. My first action after relapse every time was to shower, and not just because it was the practical thing to do, but I was also trying to wash away what just happened. After the shower, I'd bury myself in distractions. I'd play video games for hours, scroll on social media, or I would just do anything to avoid reflecting on what I'd done so I could pretend like it never happened. The problem with this is when you don't reflect, you don't make any change. And because I never actually faced the relapse, I fell into a binge cycle. I'd relapse the very next morning, or even later on that same day. And my self talk made it way worse. I'd always tell myself that I'm weak and that I'm a bad person. I would believe that relapse meant there was something wrong with me. Science backs up why this is such a dangerous trap. Shame triggers secrecy, secrecy drives isolation, and isolation means you're stuck relying on willpower alone, which we know from research, willpower works like a battery. It does run out. That is the cycle that kept me trapped for years. Maybe you felt that too. You relapse, you hate yourself, and you pretend like it never happened, only to repeat the same thing the very next day. Because that was my cycle. Even though it's been a year since I last relapsed and I fell into that harmful cycle I just described, I want to set the stage and walk you through what it might look like if I were to relapse today. So, guys, this is just a hypothetical situation. It did not happen, but I want to go over a possibility of what could happen, and then I'll describe what I would do if this situation were to happen. Imagine this with me. I finished recording this episode, and a text pops up on my phone. It's from the girl I've been seeing, and she texts me, "Mark, I had a great time on our dates, but I don't want to see you anymore. I've met someone else who's smarter, more attractive, makes way more money, and is much funnier than you." That sting of rejection hits me hard. My chest tightens, my thoughts start racing, and the old familiar voice calls me to take a peek. To feel better, of course. I go to my bedroom, close the door, and before I know it, I'm searching for porn for the first time in a year. One video turns into two videos turn into a binge, hours disappear, and then it hits me. I finish, and I sit there realizing exactly what I've just done. Now let's take a pause here. The scene I described is, of course, hypothetical, but that's what a relapse might look like if it happened to me today. The key difference is the way I would respond now versus how I used to respond to relapse. Back then, as I described, that moment would have sent me into a spiral of shame, distraction, and another cycle of binging. But today, it would look completely different. So, the very first thing that I would do is I would tell someone. My sister, who's accepted me through my whole recovery, would be getting a phone call. Then, my accountability partner, Nathan, he would be getting a message as well. This is someone who's walked with me through the ups and downs of recovery, and I know he would show up for me here as well. This matters because the act of telling someone immediately would force you into accountability. Now, other people know what happened. And not only will they support you in the upcoming weeks or months, but sharing it ensures that the relapse doesn't get locked away as a secret. I know firsthand the power secrecy has in addiction, and I would not allow it to even get a sliver of room to grow again. The second thing I would do is practice compassion instead of shame. In the past, I would tell myself in this situation that I'm weak. I've ruined all my progress, and I have failed. But today, if this happened, I would slow down and remind myself, yes, this did happen. Relapse obviously was not my goal, but I am still worthy and I can still grow from this. Then I would ask, what do I need right now? Is it support, connection, a change of environment? That self check in shifts the focus from shame to healing. The third thing I would do is reflect. I'd ask what led to this. Was it an event? Was it an emotion? Or was it a combination of things? By staying curious, you can actually learn from the relapse instead of being crushed by it. Because in most cases, it's not just the trigger itself. In this case, in the hypothetical situation I gave, rejection was that trigger. But sometimes reflection reveals that relapse has been building for weeks. Maybe you've been neglecting sleep. Maybe you've been isolating yourself, or you haven't been keeping up with the health routines that built your recovery in the first place. And in my hypothetical situation, the rejection could have just been the tipping point. That is the power of reflection. Awareness helps you see the entire picture, and once you see it, you can adjust your game plan for next time. That's where real growth happens. Let me turn this back to you for a second. If you've relapsed recently and you feel hopeless in your recovery, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not broken. You are not weak. You're not hopeless. And relapse does not erase the progress that you've already made. Here's what I would tell you if I were sitting across from you right now. The first thing is don't keep it a secret. Reach out to one safe person today. Maybe you already have an accountability partner, or you're in a recovery group. Or maybe today is the day that you break that boundary and you tell a trusted person in your life what you're going through. The second thing I would tell you is don't attack yourself. Show yourself compassion instead of shame. And remind yourself that relapse happened. Obviously, it was not a part of your goal, but you can still pick yourself up and continue moving forward and grow from it. The third thing I would ask for you is to reflect. Ask yourself what led to this. Was it an event? Was it an emotion? Or was it a combination of different factors? And I ask you, get curious with this because curiosity is what transforms relapse into a lesson you could take away. Finally, my last ask would be to make one change. You don't have to try to fix everything at once, but make one step in the right direction. Relapse is not the end of recovery, it is just feedback. And if you let it, it can actually point you to the next step in your recovery. So if I relapse today, that is what I would do. Not hide, not hate myself, but turn relapse into action. And that's exactly what I want for you too. If this episode today helped you, share it with someone that needs to hear it. And if you've been enjoying the podcast so far, please leave a review because it helps other guys find this show. Thank you for listening to the Pausing Porn podcast. I'll see you guys in the next one.